Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Just so you know, the questions are not being monitored by here. We'll have mics for questions. So I think it's Pierre and Jacques will go around with mics. Jacques,
Hello everyone.
Bonjour à tous. Bienvenue au Théâtre national de la presse. Le premier ministre Justin Trudeau va faire une annonce. S'il vous plaît, mettez vos téléphones sur vibration pour ne pas déranger la conférence de presse. Après l'allocution, on va prendre des questions. We'll have questions afterward. The list is here. Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Merci, PV. Hello everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être avec nous ce matin. Comme vous le savez tous, la semaine dernière, c'est tout le pays qui a été ébranlé par la tragédie. Nous avons tous été choqués d'apprendre que le vol 752 de Ukraine Airlines avait été abattu par les Iraniens. La nouvelle du décès de 57 Canadiens, de 138 passagers, de 176 personnes a plongé le Canada dans le deuil. Mais c'est dans ces moments sombres que nous avons aussi été témoins d'un grand élan de solidarité. We now know many of the stories of the 57 Canadians, of the 29 permanent residents, and of the visitors and students who made up the 138 people coming to Canada that day. Across the country, Canadians came together to pay tribute to the victims, to offer their condolences to the families, to be there for their community. The outpouring of love and support we've witnessed this past week has been a beautiful tribute not only to the victims' memory, but to their spirit. What happened last week was nothing short of a national tragedy. To the families and loved ones of the victims, all Canadians are mourning your loss. You are in our thoughts and in our hearts during this most difficult time. Comme nous l'avons dit à plusieurs reprises, notre plus grande priorité en ce moment, c'est d'appuyer les familles et les proches des victimes. Au cours des derniers jours, la vice-première ministre Freeland, le ministre Champagne, mon secrétaire parlementaire Omar Al-Khabra et moi-même avons rencontré des familles touchées par cette tragédie à Montréal, à Toronto, à Edmonton et à Vancouver. Mercredi, le secrétaire parlementaire Al-Khabra et le ministre Garneau ont tenu un point de presse pour faire une mise à jour sur les derniers développements. Ils ont annoncé que notre gouvernement et Santé Canada se mobilisaient pour veiller à ce que les personnes endeuillées aient accès à des services de santé mentale. J'ai demandé au sénateur Stan Kutcher, un expert dans le domaine de la santé mentale, de conseiller l'unité d'intervention d'urgence sur les meilleurs moyens d'appuyer les familles. Je tiens aussi à rappeler à tout le monde que la semaine dernière, notre gouvernement a mis en place une ligne téléphonique et une boîte courriel réservée aux familles pour les demandes liées à l'immigration. Affaires mondiales Canada a également conçu un site web pour les familles qui contient des renseignements sur le soutien offert à ceux et celles qui ont perdu un proche. Our government is waiving or reimbursing all fees for visas and other required travel documents and expediting requests. This means that while regular application screening still applies, we can issue visas to families in a matter of hours instead of weeks. Other needed travel and status documents, such as permanent resident cards and permits, are also being processed much more quickly than they usually would in these particular circumstances. As part of Wednesday's update, Minister Garneau also talked about assistance for families, and we now have more details to share with Canadians. As a first step, the government will give families of the victims who are Canadian citizens or permanent residents $25,000 per victim to assist with their immediate needs, such as funeral arrangements and travel. This is a unique and unprecedented situation because of the international sanctions placed on Iran and the difficulties that that imposes on these families. I want to be clear. We expect Iran to compensate these families. But I have met them. They can't wait weeks. They need support now. Je veux insister sur le fait qu'il s'agit d'une première étape. Ces familles ont perdu un proche dans des circonstances extraordinaires qui rendent cette période de deuil encore plus éprouvante. Notre gouvernement demeure fermement engagé à obtenir justice pour ceux et celles qui ont perdu un proche, et ça inclut une compensation financière. We also know that families are looking for legal information and resources, and I'm pleased to announce that we are working with Pro Bono Ontario to provide more support. A dedicated national 1-800 line will connect callers from anywhere in Canada to a lawyer who can provide legal information and advice. In times like these, I am incredibly proud to see Canadians coming together in support of those who are hurting. Air Canada and their partners at Qatar Airlines have been facilitating travel for those wishing to travel from Canada to Iran or from Iran to Canada. Our government is working with the Canadian Bankers Association so that families can manage the estates of the victims more easily. Similarly, we've also been working with the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association to ensure that families are receiving the services and support to which they are entitled. And finally, a number of wonderful initiatives, including Canada Strong and others, have also been set up by communities across the country to provide additional support to those in mourning. I encourage Canadians to make a donation if they can. Our government is also looking to support these efforts, and we will have more to share in the coming days. Canada continues to call for a thorough and credible investigation into last week's tragedy. Yesterday, Minister Champagne was in London to convene the members of the International Coordination and Response Group for the victims of Flight PS 752. They agreed on a framework to guide our engagement with the Iranian authorities. And as we speak, Minister Champagne is in Oman, meeting with his Iranian counterpart to discuss how we can bring justice and accountability to the families of the victims. He is also reiterating Canada's call for de-escalation in the region. As we have said before, last week's missile attacks by Iran in Iraq put the lives of our men and women in uniform at risk. Minister Sajjan has been meeting with troops in the region who have been working hard with our allies to stabilize Iraq and counter Daesh. Une semaine après la tragédie, la situation continue d'évoluer. Je veux assurer tous les Canadiens que notre gouvernement se mobilise sur tous les fronts pour appuyer les familles en deuil et obtenir les réponses à nos questions. We're working hard to bring some peace of mind to those affected by last week's tragedy. Our top priority is to support them during this incredibly difficult time. Once again, I thank you all for joining us. I will now take your questions.
On va aller aux questions. On a 20 minutes de questions. We have 20 minutes of question, one follow-up. Please keep it short because we have 20 media outlets here asking questions. On va commencer avec CP, Canadian Press.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Can you just explain a little bit about the 25,000 as far as how you came to that number, whether there might be more available to the families, and as well, just when will that money actually be dispersed to them?
We have been meeting with families over the past weeks. I have had direct conversations with them on the needs they're facing, everything from bills that are coming in to credit cards that are maxed out to real questions about how to get back to Iran to support their families there or bring people over at a time where air travel is increasingly limited in the region and expensive. We in discussion with those families came at the $25,000 per victim initiative. But obviously this is immediate assistance for a range of needs that they might have. It is not the compensation that we expect will come and should come from Iran in due course, but these families need help now. And we will be getting this money to them as quickly as we possibly can in the coming days.
So do you have a number then, when you're talking about Iran, do you have a number that you expect Iran, do you expect them to repay the 25,000 and potentially how much more on top of that?
We haven't looked at what the full compensation would end up looking like from Iran, but I can assure you that any money from Iran to the victims would go straight to them and wouldn't be to reimburse the Canadian government.
TVA Nouvelle.
Sur le 25 000 comment vous êtes arrivé à ce montant?
Dans les rencontres avec les familles au cours de la dernière semaine, on a entendu les pressions qui sont en train de vivre, que ce soit des comptes à payer dans l'immédiat, que ce soit des préoccupations par rapport au déplacement de la famille pour aller recueillir les dépouilles, que ce soit en termes d'incertitude financière et économique. Nous reconnaissons qu'ils ont besoin d'aide maintenant avec beaucoup de leurs cartes de crédit qui sont à leur limite à cause des dépenses extra qu'ils sont en train de vivre. C'est le montant auquel on est arrivé, mais ce n'est qu'une assistance immédiate. Nous nous attendons à ce que l'Iran compense ces familles de façon adéquate dans le moyen terme.
Champagne rencontre son homologue iranien. Est-ce que vous avez des détails sur ce qui s'est dit lors de la rencontre ce matin et par rapport à la compensation que l'Iran doit verser?
Cette rencontre vient juste de terminer pendant que j'étais en route pour venir vous voir, donc j'ai pas énormément de détails. Je peux dire qu'il a encore une fois appelé à la désescalation des tensions dans la région, a fait part des 5 conclusions de la rencontre de la communauté internationale hier à Londres par rapport aux victimes de cette tragédie. Il va continuer, il a continué de demander la coopération immédiate présente de l'Iran par rapport à l'enquête, par rapport à l'appui aux familles et le respect des désirs des familles par rapport à ce qui se passe avec leurs proches victimes.
CBC.
Prime Minister, today Iran's supreme leader defended the Revolutionary Guard. I'm wondering if it makes it more difficult to get to the truth of the circumstances surrounding the downing of the aircraft.
We have been assured by Iran, but we are also ensuring through the international community that there be a full international rigorous investigation on all aspects of this tragedy. That is what we continue to push on. That is what the international community is pushing on. And so far, the people we've engaged with in Iran have been aligned with that wish for now.
Prime Minister Tom Perry with CBC News. You've called on Iran to take full responsibility for shooting down this aircraft. I'm wondering, though, if you have any questions for Ukraine or Ukrainian International Airlines about why the plane was allowed to take off in the first place.
I think those are the kinds of questions that will be answered with a full investigation in which everyone is participating. The engagement of ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Authority based in Montreal, in this investigation will allow us to continue the work that was initiated after the Malaysian Airlines shoot down 5 years ago over eastern Ukraine, on reflections on how the international community and international civil aviation authorities can ensure that these situations no longer happen. Obviously, there will be many aspects of what happened on that terrible night to be reflected on and to take measures on, but it would be premature to speculate on areas of responsibility or exactly what could have been done differently until we have all the facts.
Le devoir.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. L'Iran a annoncé avoir déjà arrêté des coupables, selon eux. Êtes-vous satisfait ou confiant de leurs conclusions sur cette partie-là de l'enquête? Et est-ce que pour vous, qui avez maintes fois dit que vous vouliez que les responsables fassent face à la justice, est-ce que pour vous, cet aspect-là du dossier est clos?
Non, au contraire, on a énormément de questions encore sur comment ça s'est passé. Évidemment, il y a eu des personnes à l'intérieur des forces armées iraniennes qui ont été directement responsables de lancer ce ou ces missiles. mais par rapport au système qui est en place, qui leur a donné l'autorité de faire ça, par rapport à comprendre peut-être sûrement des failles dans la hiérarchie ou le système iranien qui a permis à ça de se produire, on a énormément de questions. C'est pour ça qu'on a passé le message que ces gens-là doivent faire face à des questions par les enquêteurs à l'international pour mieux comprendre pas juste les actions d'individus, mais le système qui a permis à cette tragédie de se produire.
Mais même sur les individus qui ont supposément été arrêtés, avez-vous confiance que c'est les bonnes personnes ou est-ce que c'est... Il y a un drôle de bruit. Avez-vous confiance que c'est les bonnes personnes ou est-ce que vous avez peur que ce soit les, à défaut d'avoir le meilleur mot, là, des scapegoats et que essentiellement cette partie-là de l'enquête n'ait pas eu lieu et n'aura pas lieu?
C'est justement une des préoccupations que nous avons. Nous n'avons pas énormément d'informations sur les arrestations qui ont été faites en Iran et ça fait partie de ce que les enquêteurs à l'international et les gens qui sont engagés dans, dans le désir de répondre à ces questions sont en train de poser ces questions-là. Mais non, nous ne sommes pas satisfaits que ça va s'arrêter là.
Winnipeg, Free Press.
Prime Minister, how much is this going to influence the prospect of reestablishing links with Iran, the way that they proceed with these questions that you're raising?
Right now, our focus is on getting answers for the families right now. In this immediate process. Obviously, we are engaging with Iran on support for the families, on responding to the families' wishes. We can say that about 20 families of the Canadian citizens have asked for their loved ones to be returned to Canada. Many others are expecting that they be buried in Iran. So far, our efforts to respect whatever wishes the families have been facilitated and coordinated with Iranians. There will be many questions that we will have to reflect on in the coming months on relations with Iran. Right now, we are focused on doing everything we can to get answers and support to those families.
Michelle Carper with the Globe and Mail. Will your government sanction the Iranian Revolutionary Guard?
Our focus right now is on supporting the families who need answers and who need assistance from the Iranian government to get their loved ones home or to move forward with identifications and burials. We are focused on that right now. There will be other questions to reflect on and to answer in the coming months.
Radio-Canada.
Oh, sorry, one follow-up. We've seen reports that some of the remains of the Ukrainian victims will be sent back to Ukraine, but we haven't heard the same for Canadians. Have any identified Canadian remains been sent back to Canada at this point?
No, there have been no Canadians returned to Canada at this point, but we are expecting the first ones to come back in the coming days.
Radio-Canada.
Ben d'abord, pouvez-vous être plus précis là-dessus? Qu'est-ce que vous attendez?
Dans les journées à venir, on s'attend qu'on commence à recevoir des dépouilles au Canada.
Première question pour moi, pour les complications que ça entraîne, justement.
Complications par rapport à...
Au niveau de la reconnaissance de la double citoyenneté, par exemple.
Je reconnais que le gouvernement iranien a pris les mesures pour comprendre et accepter les désirs des citoyens, les désirs des familles. Ce que les familles veulent par rapport où l'enterrement aura lieu et les autorités iraniennes et évidemment le Canada est en train de respecter ces désirs des Canadiens. Nous pouvons dire que au total, on a rejoint toutes les familles des citoyens canadiens et la grande majorité des résidents permanents. On a pu savoir directement c'est quoi les désirs de ces familles-là par rapport à l'enterrement et par rapport aux prochaines étapes. Et donc, nous avons partagé ça avec l'Iran. Et la question de double citoyen n'entre pas tellement en jeu parce que les autorités iraniennes sont en train de reconnaître que c'est les désirs des familles qui priment là-dessus et que ce soit un citoyen canadien ou un résident permanent, si la famille veut que leur être cher revienne au Canada pour être enterré, ça sera facilité.
CTV.
Thanks. Just in English, can you describe, excuse me, what your foreign minister is discussing today with his Iranian counterpart, and with respect to compensation? Is he asking him to make a voluntary payments to the families, or is it something that you think is going to have to go to civil litigation at some point?
Well, a piece of what one of the primary reasons for the Foreign Minister Champagne to be meeting with the Iranian Foreign Minister is to share the conclusions and the elements of what the International Coordination Response Group are asking for. And the fourth point of that is that Iran assume full responsibility for the downing of Flight PS-752 and recognize its duties towards the families of the victims and other parties, including compensation. That is part of the meeting that just happened. Part of it was also to call for good cooperation between Canada and Iran to respect the wishes of the families, but also to keep moving forward to condemnation, to de-escalation in the region, which will include a repetition of our condemnation of the missile attacks on the Canadian station in Erbil.
Your television interview earlier this week provoked some strong reaction in some quarters in Washington, and I just want to clarify, without repeating what you said, to what extent do you hold the assassination of General Soleimani responsible for what happened to the Canadians aboard that aircraft? What is your level of culpability you think the Americans bear in this?
The Iranians bear full responsibility for having shot down a civilian airline with 57 Canadians aboard, 176 passengers. We will be working very hard alongside partners internationally to bring down tensions in the region on all sides, to look to de-escalation and stability in the region. That is our focus.
La presse.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Est-ce que le Canada a l'intention de saisir des instances des Nations Unies de cette question, de cette tragédie, ce qui s'est passé? Quelle instance précise pourrait être saisie de ce dossier?
Une des leçons que m'a partagé le Premier ministre des Pays-Bas suite à un appel que j'ai eu, dans un appel que j'ai eu avec lui sur les leçons qu'ils ont tirées de l'incident du vol Malaysian Airlines a été que ça a été utile d'avoir une résolution aux Nations Unies qui parlait d'avoir besoin d'une enquête approfondie, indépendante sur cet enjeu pour tirer des conclusions, pour pouvoir empêcher que ça se reproduise. Et c'est une chose qu'on est en train de regarder maintenant avec nos partenaires à l'ONU.
Et deuxième question, dans quelle mesure les États-Unis ont appuyé, aidé ou offert son support au Canada dans sa quête pour obtenir les réponses auxquelles on s'attend?
Tous nos partenaires en termes d'intelligence, de renseignement ont été utiles, que ce soit par rapport à des photos satellites, que ce soit par rapport à de l'intelligence, que ce soit par rapport à de l'appui diplomatique. Il y a bien des pays qui nous ont aidés énormément, particulièrement l'Italie qui sert de notre interlocuteur formel avec le gouvernement iranien parce qu'on n'a pas de relations diplomatiques, mais aussi les Australiens, aussi les Suisses, aussi les Français et évidemment tous nos partenaires des Five Eyes.
Global.
I understand that the meeting with Minister Zarif just wrapped up, but the requests of the group were announced yesterday. I'm wondering if you have any indication of how Iran is responding to them.
I haven't had any early indications on that. As I said, the meeting just concluded as I was coming over, but I can assure you that we have been hearing, and I am certain that it was reiterated in that meeting, that Iran wishes to cooperate with the international community on the investigation, on getting answers for the families, and on supporting the families through the time of grief.
I'm also wondering if there's any update to the Canadian investigators who were on standby to have access to the black boxes and whether that access has been granted.
The issue with the black boxes is that they were significantly damaged, and it is extremely important, including according to ICAO Protocol number 13, I believe, that they be examined as rapidly as possible. Iran does not have the level of technical expertise and mostly the equipment necessary to be able to analyze these damaged black boxes quickly. There are only a few places in the world that can. France has one of the laboratories that can do it. There is a beginning of a consensus that the French have certainly offered to do it, that would be the right place to send those black boxes to get proper information from them in a rapid way. And that is what we are encouraging the Iranian authorities to agree to.
On a un petit peu plus que 2 minutes, la presse canadienne.
Rapidement, bonjour Monsieur Trudeau. À peu près la même question sur les boîtes noires. Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire sur la mise à jour et à quel moment les enquêteurs canadiens pourront les analyser?
L'analyse des boîtes noires endommagées ne se fait que dans quelques endroits dans le monde qui ont la capacité et technique et technologique de pouvoir le faire. La France est un endroit qui pourrait tout à fait le faire et il y a un consensus assez clair. Les Français ont certainement offert de faire l'analyse. La communauté internationale, y compris des experts canadiens, pourraient être présents dans ce processus-là et on est en train d'encourager les Iraniens de permettre une analyse immédiate et profonde en France de ces boîtes noires.
Okay, juste pour être clair, donc on ne sait pas à quel moment les enquêteurs canadiens pourront y aller?
Les enquêteurs canadiens sont sur le terrain maintenant en Iran. Ils sont en train de regarder le site et partager leurs informations avec notre système canadien, mais en même temps, par rapport à la boîte noire, ça prend des habiletés techniques et technologiques qui ne sont pas disponibles sur le terrain en Iran.
Reuters.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Steve Scheer with Reuters. Yesterday, the 5 countries spoke about an independent criminal investigation and an impartial judicial proceedings. I was wondering if you thought that could be done in Iran, and and what you thought that process might look like. Is that something that should take place elsewhere?
I think it's very clear that is an important step for the families and for the international community, but it is a separate step from the investigation into what happened. For example, in Canada, our Transportation Safety Board is engaged fully with the investigation, but they are separate from any judicial proceedings. They're even indeed separate from government. They are a standalone independent agency that is focused on getting answers. What those answers lead to in terms of justice, in terms of criminal proceedings, in terms of next steps is separate from that. We certainly are calling for justice and for criminal steps to be taken if that is what the investigation leads to, as it likely looks like it will. But that is a separate step that we will engage with at the appropriate moment in the appropriate way.
A follow-up for the last question.
So no idea what timing that would be and whether it could take place in Iran. Is that something that should take place outside of Iran or not?
I think that's a decision to take as time goes on and as we look at what we get from every given step. But a lot will depend on the cooperation with the Iranian authorities, access to individuals and the system that obviously failed when a civilian airline or a commercial airline was shot down. These are things that we are taking very seriously, but we are focused right now on getting the answers that families need, getting the support to families, and making sure that the investigation in the crucial steps that happen in the first days and weeks after a terrible tragedy like this are done in the right way so that we do have options going forward.
Merci à tous. Thank you very much.
Merci tout le monde.
Hello again, I'm Martin Stringer, and you have been listening to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau with an update on the situation concerning Flight 752, shot down by the Iranians, killing 176 people, including 57 Canadians. Now, the Prime Minister, you heard, announced that the Canadian government will offer an immediate assistance of $25,000 per victim to the families of those Canadians who died. Justin Trudeau also thanked the private sector for some of the many initiatives which have sprung out to help Canadian families, including for legal aid and for some travel arrangements. He also reiterated Canada's demand for a fuller compensation from the government of Iran, which has accepted responsibility for the shooting down, and a full and open investigation with better access and participation to Canadian investigators. Well, that's it for our live coverage of this update from Prime Minister Trudeau, and we are now going to return you to our regularly scheduled programming.